everyone who's watching. Yeah, probably just me in 3 years' time, looking at this ridiculous beard and laughing at myself. Um, I'm kind of thinking about today what the future is going to be like in terms of real estate property, which is really boring. But this isn't really about investing. It's really just a hypothetical, kind of just a thought process, really, that I'm going through. I don't really feel a need to talk about this today. The reason I'm making this video is just because I feel like I want to try to make a video even though I don't want to make one right now. So that's what I'm doing. Anyway, I've been thinking about real estate in the future, and a lot of people are saying like there's a crash now, there's a crash next year, blah blah blah, and because of this, because of that, blah blah blah. I just think it's all a bit, it's very sensational. Like I look at YouTube stuff and I watch stuff. My entire feed is just about investing, real estate bonds and stuff, which is weird because I don't actually invest. I talk about it a lot, but I've yet to put my foot in the door, so to speak. And also, it's like all science and futurism related stuff. AI, a lot of AI and robotics stuff, a lot of like medicines, breakthroughs in medicine and pharmacology, breakthroughs in psychology, changing neurological patterns, stuff like that. Yeah, but or everything I see is super sensationalized. Like every video would make you think that within an hour there's going to be a 500% stock market crash. Yeah, it's not possible. Whatever, 80% stock market crash. They definitely predicted that this was going to happen. They're definitely right, and no one else can be. And even if they were wrong before, they're right now. I've seen a million of these recycled videos on these kind of subjects when it comes to real estate. Also on science, medical advances. It's going to be next week, and we've done this quantum thing, and blah blah blah. I'm sure some of it's real, but it's not. It's not going to be implemented tomorrow. Let's say all of these things were invented today. Every single thing you could imagine. It take corporations 2 or 3 years to actually implement them. Anyway, regulations, just how slow people are to adapt. So a lot of it's rubbish, but there are some things I agree with in terms of real estate, and some things that I've been thinking of recently. So outside of, I think, basically Africa as a continent, the population is shrinking. The demographics of the world are changing quite a lot. And you'll see in like European countries that the population numbers are growing, but that's just because we're importing people from the rest of the world. With the tensions that are going on now, I don't think that'll continue to be a trend. It's not me supporting either side of that debate. I don't care. My point is, that's probably not going to continue, right? So, people going about real estate prices saying that it's all going to drop, blah, 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 next year, next week. Maybe. But I do think we're probably getting close to peak values. I think institutions are behind the curve, and I think that governments are not necessarily behind the curve, but building, putting up new buildings and encouraging people to make new things and construction grants. It's good for GDP, it's good for business, a bit of money. Sell the illusion for another 5 years. But at some point, maybe in 5 years, maybe 10 years, I'm not sure how far out. I don't think it's that far out. But at some point, right, there's a few factors, right? At some point, these prices are going to go down, and I'll get into why. There's a few factors. So one is, right, one is that shrinking population. There's not that much demand, really, future demand, I mean, for housing and properties. There is a lot of artificial demand in Europe at the moment because of the amount of migration going on in European countries. But that is not going to last forever. That trend may be reversed because of the way politics are. And anyway, generally worldwide, it's just outside of Africa, it's just not really a trend that makes sense. So because of that factor, because the population's in decline for the most part globally outside of Africa, if migration continues, then I'm wrong about this. But I don't think it will. Not in this way. So in 5, 10 years, whatever it is, there won't be the demand because there won't be that many people to be tenants, to be purchasers of these buildings. It doesn't really make sense. And a lot of I see a lot of new builds just in the middle of the city, but they're not by like a beautiful piece of land or a river or a statue. There's nothing really special about these buildings other than their location. So there's a few other conversion things that I'll get into. So there's 2 points, and they're both on AI and technological progression. So if you look at universities now, to me it's clear that most degrees are pretty much going to be over in the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and institutions, the government and the public are going to catch up in about 6 years, 5 years, something like that. It's not going to be that long. So there could be an argument that yes, there's decline in population, but because of urbanization, people are going to flock to the cities because they want the city jobs and they want to go to the universities there. If there's like a big slash in university attendance, let's say a 60%, 80% drop in university attendance, I think 80% is closer, but there are some things in university, like there are vocational things that you can study in university that you have to be physically present. Chemistry, lab stuff, some biology stuff, maybe. And there might be reserve spots so that some humans in the population retain knowledge so that we don't become too dependent on AI in case it malfunctions and it's not a good project. There'll be stuff like medical degrees, like becoming a doctor. You'll have to do a placement and do a degree. So, there'll still be some viable degrees in 6 years' time, but the demand will drop massively. So a lot of that demand for like student accommodation and housing in big cities, it's gone. So you're also factoring in population decline in general, globally outside of Africa. Those are 2 factors. The third factor, there's actually 4 now that I think of it. So the third factor is this whole AI replacing jobs, AI replacing physical labor as well with the humanoid robotics. But this is a bit speculative, really, a thing for me to say, because I do believe that humanoid robotics will take over quite a lot of physical labor. AI is capable of taking over a lot of cognitive labor, but it's not as good as people thought it would be at this point. It's, according to professionals, it's way ahead of where it should be. According to people who are actually trying to implement it in business, it's miles behind what it was promised to be. So somebody's lying in there, and I see that companies are rehiring or whatever. But I do see that eventually, this has the potential to shift jobs away from cities, because you don't need to be in a city, because there's no jobs in the city because it's all going to AI first off. The job you can do in a city, would they really pay any more in that city when there's no end customer? I actually think a construction job in a village would pay more because more people want to live there. There's more demand for somebody who's a plumber in a village in the future because more people want to live in these kind of places. People don't want to live in cities because they're beautiful, for the most part. There are some people. The majority of them are there for the social life, for the jobs, and for the opportunities. They don't go outside and think, wow, what a marvelous miracle of nature this is. So I think we'll see a lot of people moving to rural areas, and that's what I want to get into as the next factor is now this is even more speculative, but I think AI will lead to like a materials revolution. Not a revolution, but it will advance material sciences quite quickly. Humanoid robots will massively reduce labor costs. They'll probably help us design like better energy grids, better systems. We'll probably invest in more solar, meaning that we'll have a lot more energy, net energy, way more, like 10 times more, 100 times more. Who knows? Who knows, right? But we're going to have a lot more energy production, I would say. Meaning that desalination becomes quite achievable because the main barrier to desalination is the cost, and the cost of electricity, more specifically. I believe, I could be wrong. If anyone but me is watching this, let me know if I'm wrong. I could be. I fully admit I could be wrong. Which would mean you could live pretty much everywhere. I mean, if you've got automated transport systems, extremely cheap labor, you pay 3% more to build a house out in the countryside because of the distance. Doesn't really matter. It's not really that big a deal. And you don't have to live in the city. So I think more people will live in like isolated pockets of the world. People will move away from cities. Now, that's not to say that I think that all real estate will decrease in value. I think cultural centres, so like parts of London, some parts of London, for example, will actually preserve their value, or maybe keep going up in value. Just some things, not London overall. Most houses and apartments in London will go by the wayside, but a few things like by Buckingham Palace, by Parliament Square, will probably preserve or gain value over time because the buildings aren't finite anymore. London's no longer a competitive place to go or somewhere that someone wants to go. But there are only so many cultural spots in the world with as much significance as say Wall Street, right? Say Tiananmen Square, sorry, the Chinese people, but whatever, yeah. So places that are culturally very interesting, I think will retain value or potentially gain value, and I think that kind of tourism will probably increase in the future, potentially, because people won't have a lot to do. So I think the value of land like that and buildings, these kinds of places, will increase in value. And another thing, I think that like you might say, okay, so land in the countryside is going to become more expensive. Maybe, but it's already pretty expensive in like countries like the UK and the Netherlands and stuff. So I don't think it's going to become more expensive in those countries. I think it's pretty much about as expensive as it can get. We only need so much land. So I don't think that will necessarily go up. But what I do think will go up is land in very scenic, extremely scenic, special parts of the countryside. So again, it's like a very specific placement. So for example, where I am now in Himachal Pradesh in India, yeah, you wouldn't want to live there, and it's not worth anything living by the Himalayas out here because right now it's super hot. It's difficult. You've got to drive so far away for work. Yes, it's very beautiful. Yes, you can use it for farmland, but preoccupied with survival and the heat and the mosquitoes and the insects and the blah, 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 blah. So it doesn't make it very appealing. But owning a really high up piece of land or property on a mountain like this with, great mountain views and the great air, great natural air in the future will be worth more because you'll be able to get autonomous drones to kill all the mosquitoes, smart systems to control the water, to do everything. You won't necessarily need to work either. The transport inconvenience won't matter because so many things will be digital. And I think drone swarms and like autonomous vehicles will just be so game changing. It will still matter a little, but it won't matter that much. So I think scenic places will be very beautiful. I remember Tay Nguyen, I don't know how to say that, Tay Nguyen, in Vietnam, where I lived. Most of it, wasn't amazing to look at. It was sort of industrial, but it was nice. Like, it's still a nice place to be, but it's not super super beautiful. Not super ugly either. Not saying that either. But there's a really posh part in the city centre, not in the business centre, not in the finance centre of the city, but in the like posh district centre. And there's a massive lake, gigantic lake, really beautiful buildings, fishing spots, and all that kind of thing. These kind of properties will become more valuable, in my opinion, because they're, again, cultural significance and just place of beauty, a place you would want to live. Almost uniformly, anyone would want to live there. Like, I see these big houses and the big lake, and I think, yeah, if I were Vietnamese and I had money, that's where I'd live. Not because I want to show off, but because it's nice. It's a nice big house, best view in the whole city. It's a great place to be. So I think certain land will become more valuable. Land in, say, Argentina, Brazil, or whatever, I don't think it's going to see, massive appreciation. It might see like a 5-10% increase when people are first getting on the whole, oh, I can live in an isolated pocket of nowhere, and then once the fad's over and it's kind of maxed out, it'll max out an extra 5-10% appreciation. But I don't think most real estate's going to appreciate in price. I actually think eventually, I think the majority of it's going to not crash. I think just slowly go down 80%, 90%, maybe more, which sounds really insane and drastic, but the cost of building a house, the cost of maintaining it is mainly the labor. In cheaper countries, it's about 50-50 split between labor and materials. But if all of that is like 7, 8, 9, 10 times cheaper, it really devalues property. Property no longer becomes the bricks and mortar that have value. It's location, and it's that the parameters of location will change in the future. Anyways, I don't know why I went on about this. Not giving out financial advice. I know no one's listening to this, but I feel like it's good to get some of these ideas out my head. I'm thinking to myself all night long, so it's good to do that and look back.